Good morning. We're going to call this Monday morning, May 24th, 2021 meeting of the Redistricting Committee to order. Start with roll call, please.
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Payton?
Present.
Mr. Seroy?
Present.
Ms. Weber?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Present.
Ms. Polk?
Present.
Mr. Featherling?
Present.
Mr. Hunter?
Present.
Mr. Collins?
Present.
We have a quorum.
We'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from April 19th, 2021 and April 26th, 2021 by Mr. Featherling, second by Mr. Hunter. Roll call.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Seroy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll start with a presentation of the draft of the county board maps A&E.
Did we have that PowerPoint first? Bones, we were
Yep,
gonna
that's
go
right,
through that real quick.
PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's you. So next slide. Nope, back
Nope,
up.
back up. There we go. This is a reminder or an update what the goal is of this committee. We want the districts shall be comprised of contiguous territory as nearly compact as practicable. Districts may divide townships and municipalities only when necessary to conform with the population requirement. That's the plus or minus. Shall be created in such a manner that no precinct shall be divided into two or more districts insofar as is practicable. Practicable, boy, that's a hard word. And each district shall be substantially equal in population to each other district. Next slide there. Would you like to discuss this, Chairman?
I don't know if we need to discuss it, but I would say, does that look compact to you? What's on the screen? Does that look gerrymandered? Does that look fair? Because that's what the Illinois House just put out as our legislative map. So when you see ours, you'll notice a stark difference. Something that's done jointly together in the light of day, and then you have something now which is frankly disgusting. So I thought I would just mention that personally. I don't know how everybody else feels, but no matter what side of the political fence you're on, that is not a fair map. So we didn't do it that way. So you can get rid of that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll start with a presentation of the draft county board maps A through F.
I had a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Featherling.
Who oversees all this, Mr. Rowe?
Would you use the microphone? So it's,
For the
Who
state,
oversees all this
for
stuff?
the state or for the county?
For maps like that?
For the state?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it comes out of the legislature, and then at some point, someone can contest it, and it would go to the courts. So initially, a local court, then an appellate court.
So if somebody contests the map, can it be held up for like a year or 6 months or 3 months?
Usually, once the map passes, then the party would have to go to court. They could file for maybe a restraining order or an injunction to prevent implementation of the map, at least in the upcoming election cycle. But that's all up to a court whether they would grant that or not. So they can go in, they can contest it, they can say it's unfair, they can ask a court to sort of hold it in abeyance before it would go into effect for an electoral cycle. But whether they stop it, whether it's ultimately upheld or not, that's up to the judge to decide, and then probably ultimately an appellate court to decide whether it's a fair map or not.
Okay, thank you.
okay, I think a goal we should probably set today is that we go through everything, we have our discussion, and then we can eliminate some maps. That way when we come back on Friday or Monday, you know, we can make our final decision. I believe that's a goal we ought to set for ourselves for today.
Repeat.
Go ahead, Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, repeat that again. There's not going to be a definitive determination.
No, We should eliminate some of the maps today
Right.
that are not viable,
Right.
and then come back on Friday or Monday, Friday and Monday, to make our final decision.
Is Monday a holiday?
Or Tuesday, pardon me, it'd be Tuesday the 1st. Tuesday the 1st, so.
And in terms of the elimination, you know, prior to the meeting commencing, I mean, there's some, well, how can I phrase this? One of the maps may not be viable due to the possibility of not passing the smell test, as well as the empirical evidence which they have there, which the Voting Rights Act and the other stuff that was mentioned may cause some consternation and a possibility of it being thrown out.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start with map A.
Thank you. Largely, this first map is designed to kind of show, and it's up on the screen. It's 28A. It's the first one here. And as we look at those lines, it's largely similar to what we have right now with a, and if you consider that we don't, I'm sorry. Is there, if it's largely considering that we do not have any adjustments in population because we don't have census back yet. So the effort was made to just straighten out the lines, make it more compact, make sure everything was not gerrymandered. If there was a chance to update and make it better, that was kind of the spirit of how these were attacked, if you will. And then things can change based on the committee's desires, obviously. So the first map, like as mentioned, is largely the same. I did look at a few things, and I'll use this as an example to show what are the limitations of the process. If we could zoom in like into Kankakee, if you will. So if you look at these lines and go ahead and click on current County Board 28 right here, you see the lines, the red lines that pop up there, and mainly in the areas where we're talking about that are somewhat, I don't want to say gerrymandered, but not necessarily following straight lines with natural demarcation. So this one is, as an example, and I'll click on and off a couple times so you can see, it addresses cutting through some neighborhoods and things like that in a minor sense. I want to think of these as like steps. You know, we could change this, then we could change this, then we could change this, and we could, you know, that's the way these maps are kind of generated. But this is an example of kind of the way that it is laid out right now with a few adjustments in 17 and 18. That was basically in 15 of the lines, the way they all come together over here. Doesn't really change much, just kind of defines things a little bit straighter. So the one thing I did want to kind of use in this map to kind of demonstrate is that these are all by census tracts, okay? And so when you see an area in 16, which is the Briarcliff area over here, people would say, why is that little bulge sitting there on the side? Why isn't that not a straight line? Well, the way to kind of describe it is to kind of show you what the limitations are of this process and how you have to focus on population. So if I'm over here and I'm wanting to show you what happens if I were to make that a straight line with this street over here, these are all census tracts in this neighborhood here. So just by taking that one block and straightening that off, not to mention, I'll go ahead and do the whole thing. To make this one straight line, I would click that, and then where's my green? There it is. Look at, now see where 28, it says negative 1.01%, and then 16, it says negative 0.022%. So those are within plus or minus the 2% that we use as a guideline of what we're trying to get to. Look what happens when you just change that one street. It goes to plus 10% and minus 11%, and that's just not gonna fly. That's too much variation between districts. So I'm just showing you how this process works on how something so small that may seem like, well, why is this way? It's because it throws the population off by too big of a percentage. So I'm gonna back up here so I don't save over, 1 second here.
Better help them down.
No, this is not the same layout as my, there we go. But So that kind of explains that a little bit. So that's the first map, that's A. It's really largely what we have with a little bit of street cleanup to make things as much as possible.
Mr. Hunter.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Andy, I know this is not an easy task, and I understand that. No problems in terms of what I've seen. I know you have boundaries marked out. Is there a possibility, I know it may require some additional research and writing and so forth, to actually provide a narrative? Let's say, for example, me in 17, I mean, can you actually articulate what the boundaries are verbally?
Yeah, I could zoom in on it real quick.
In terms of, can you?
Legal description?
Yeah, I like a narrative. Yeah, you know, for example, and I hate to keep bringing this up.
Well, it basically goes from Grinnell Road, if you wanted to look at 17, uses Maple Street as a boundary. When it hits 17, then it grabs those neighborhoods because you have to keep population balanced between the two. And so it's, we'll say Hillcrest, largely what it is right now. That's the basic.
So you incorporated Hillcrest in there?
It already was.
That's a Roman town, okay,
Yeah, it's already part of the county board district as it existed now.
okay. Okay, well, I was just wondering if you could do that in terms of the written narrative, almost like a quasi-legal.
When we're done with the maps, it spits out the legal descriptions. So that's when we're done, and that's what Dan was here to comment on a little bit.
Okay.
That, and Dan, I don't know if you want to join us, but one of the things Dan was here, I showed him all of these different versions of the maps to say, does this put upheaval into your precinct system or something that can't be overcome when we maybe move a line on a precinct or whatever else? So Dan, do you have a specific comment there?
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning. I did have an opportunity to look at these maps late last week, and well, I wouldn't say that I've given them or been able to go into significant amounts of detail. Just as an overview, though, I think that regardless of which map you choose, we'll be able to code it without any significant issues. I did want to, since you've given me the floor, and thank you for that, want to compliment this committee on the fine work that you're doing and is being as open and transparent as possible with this. I did see those legislative maps this weekend, and I think that what they're doing there is the antithesis of what we're doing here, and what we're doing here should be the standard for everybody. But as far as the maps go themselves, as far as coding goes, it's going to be work for us regardless, but I think that there's nothing here that I see that poses such a significant challenge that it's going to be burdensome, except unduly burdensome.
Now, and you got the printout of the legal descriptions and all of that?
I did not get the legal descriptions.
They just gave you the printable?
Right.
Okay, because it does spit out all of those things you're talking about.
Yeah, that's,
Go ahead.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Because you kind of need to know, when I go to Dan that says, you know, give me the voter registration list for my district, I need to know that stuff and make sure that I don't have somebody else's who's contiguous to me. So, if I'm going to send something out to my constituents, I don't want to send it to somebody else who's not in my district. So I need to know with specificity orally. And as he said, they'll code it and they'll do the legal stuff that Seroy just talked about. So that's all I'm concerned about.
Yep. So that is, if that's okay, I can move on to showing the next ones, and then we could circle back and ask questions.
Any other questions on A so far? Okay, moving on to B.
So B, again, it is the same premise, if you will. Get rid of a few things here so we can start to discuss it. but in a different manner. So it basically creates the line. When you start balancing population, I just want to mention, you could either do it in a, I don't say east to west fashion or a north and a south fashion. So this just represents that balance in a north-south fashion. So this is kind of what you're looking at here. And also here, I'll click up the previous county board districts, and you can see those lines, how it took gerrymander out of some of these areas, made more clean lines. The red is where it was. So you can see these little things that are kind of hanging out here. What's going on there? But anyway, maybe that was the limitation of the software.
A good example is I don't know, I can't read the district, yeah, where it juts way up in both spots.
Yeah. You know, so that kind of describes a little bit about how we're addressing some of that in this version. So it's a different way to accomplish the same thing. You notice over here it moved by a sense, you know, basically those acres, a section over here on the side in just west of Kankakee. So it shows you a little bit of change there. Very minimal though. It's not earth-shattering as far as the cleanup, if you will, in these areas out here. So is there any questions about this one? And we can dive back into them, but I'll kind of show you the progression maybe, and then we'll go from there. Sorry, I was totally taking over the mouse here. For security. So again, this is just another way to look at it, of compacting, furthering the thing. Oh, let's compact some more districts. If we're going to change some things, how can we make it better? Because we don't have, again, new census numbers, and we won't until looks like September. So this one incorporates these changes, as we saw down here, and then straightened out these lines in this area. And here, also in Bradley, this area here as well. Perfect rectangle, if you will. We squared a lot of this off. It's difficult when you start getting into towns where the streets meander around, let's say like Briarcliff and things like that, because you jump one street and it's just like one little section. So in order to keep those main roads as the boundaries or town lines or things like that, this was just another way to do that and straighten up this line here, because as you see before, this area was heavily, I don't want to say heavily gerrymandered, but there was boundaries, and they were that way for population. Well, this is just a different way to balance the population in these areas as well. So let's see here. I'll zoom back out to the whole county. Sorry about that. A little blank on you there. So nothing else really has changed beyond straightening up the cities, if you will, a little bit. Mostly Kankakee, Bradley, and Bourbonnais. So is there any questions about that before we go further? And I can go to the next one, and then we can circle back. Maybe it's just going through.
Collins?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, so on B, I noticed there that redistricting 13 is my district there. The B map would leave me no longer living in my district. How does that work?
Everybody's up for election in 2 years, so this is a remap for what you run in after.
So I would no longer be able to run for my own district.
You'd be able to run for the district you live in.
Fair enough.
And that's the same way up here in Bradley, same way in Bourbonnais, same.
And if you guys haven't realized yet, if you look up there, there's no names on any of the districts or anything like that, so we're not putting, you know, we shouldn't be discussing names, we're discussing the map itself of whose district is what, so.
Yeah. It's the viability of the map, the natural borders, the compactness, all of that kind of stuff. So it's absent of all that other information. So we go to D, I believe.
D, correct.
So this one is very similar in that it was the other changes. There was another way to approach 15, which was to grab more population along the, I want to say, what is that, Water Street right here? Dairy Queen?
Yeah.
Is that Water Street right there? Okay. The west side of Kankakee through as the old 13/15, if you will. Same changes here, but then we started to think about, if you remember the other maps, let me get to that point. Momensa was divided amongst 3 board members. It was for population reasons. So we said, well, what if that area was its own district, the Momensa area, just as a what if? And so this was drawn as an answer to that, with largely keeping things the same. And then you have to take a look at this District 5, where does the population come from in order to have that balance? Because if you were to take part of Momensa out, it has to come from somewhere else. And so what it does is it turns 5 into what it really is a largely rural area, and it stays more consistent with that, and puts 2 basically shooting from state line all the way to right outside of Momensa. So it's I'd say as little upheaval as possible with trying to get that Momensa area as one area. We always have to keep in mind that the Sun River Terrace Hopkins Park connection cannot be separated, because that will, I think, rightfully be challenged.
That's under the federal voting.
It's the Federal Voting Rights Act.
Correct.
So you have to choose anchors in this process. I want to make sure everybody knows that, because if you start moving something over here, it has an impact over on the other side of the county, because everything starts sliding one direction. Or you start moving things inside the cities, and then they push out into the other areas. So you have to kind of keep in mind that every action has a equal reaction somewhere else.
And on that, the east side and the west side are the most thinly populated.
Mhm.
So if you do something in the city, then it pushes it either way, correct?
Correct, exactly. Or into another city that
Right.
pushes that into the rural area.
And Andy, I know you've said,
Hang on, let me get your mic on, sir.
Andy, I know you've talked before about the uniqueness of the county and that you have a rural majority minority community. So, and that's probably the anchor, I would say, because if you separate that, you're right, you are running afoul.
And then everything is flawed after that, in my opinion. It may balance numbers wise, but it won't pass that test.
Yeah.
So we almost, in my mind, I had to start there to provide something for you all to change, but that had to be anchored in reality, in the law.
And that's
And I
sort of
really
what,
approach Kankakee the same way. You cannot start like taking like that Illinois House map that we saw and taking little slivers out of Bourbonnais and coming into Kankakee. That's not something we would ever do, nor is it allowed by the law, frankly.
and that's what the resident of Sun River Terrace, former Mayor Shirley Bird, come to talk about.
Right.
Correct.
That if you were to separate really the Pembroke as its own district and Sun River as its own district, if you start to separate those, you really dilute the voting power there. So.
And to equalize population, they're going to be put into other districts that don't currently represent that population demographics.
Sure.
And when it's the minority, you cannot do that.
Correct.
Nor
Like they
should you.
did with St. Anne, putting them in St. Anne.
Yeah.
Please, yeah. Make sure.
Go ahead, Sam, or Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, I was just making a comment on affirming what those gentlemen were saying, because I know at one point, as our counselor indicated, Shirley Bird was very concerned that Sun River Terrace had been placed in with St. Anne, so and that's the example those guys gave, so I'm just concurring with that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So this one is the final sample map, if you will, that I helped the committee with creating. It was a different look at the Momensa area. So going between basically 2 board reps, and I forgot Mr. Payton had a little bit of Momensa at one time as well.
Right. Correct.
The bottom part, so it was really 4 at one point that had a piece of that. So if we got that down to basically 2, what does that look like with everything else on the map being largely the same? So you start looking at, this is the layout here for the city, and not much else changes. So there's a couple of options to address that. And whatever you decide, it could be like, hey, we like what we did in Moments on E, but we want to do this in the city of Kankakee like you did in B, or whatever. You can have hybrid instructions for me to go back and create for future meetings. So if you want to see that, make that mention, and we can do that as well and bring that back. But these are things, and if they're viable, we should be able to get to that, you know, plus or minus 2%. That's really kind of where I'm at. And I think that's, because that's where we started with.
And that's doable before our Friday meeting.
Before Friday, yeah, definitely. And I could probably get it done if there's more changes on Friday for Monday as well. So
Tuesday.
or for Tuesday, yeah, keep saying
Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, for Tuesday.
Well, unless he's holding a barbecue.
And just,
Tofu steaks for everybody.
just for general reference, go back and highlight that area by Moments again. If you see, that's the break along there, that's the river.
Right here.
That's what they're using, right? It's not a straight line, but that's the river, that's the boundary
That's
line.
fair.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
correct?
that's a good boundary.
Yep, okay.
And again, you could jump it just to get population. That's really the only reason you would ever want to jump a natural boundary like that. And it's still not the best idea. As evidenced over here, like with, you know, 28 and 9, that's just a river separating throughout this area. And it makes it, I want to say, look gerrymandered, if you will, but that's just the layout of the county we live in. You know, we've got some idiosyncrasies, a couple of rivers coming together. You know, it's, you know, and then like a majority minority rural district that you just don't see a whole lot of times. So, so that's kind of where we're at for consideration. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one.
Yep,
We actually had someone from the public submit a map. It came in towards the end of the day on Friday. So we decided we got time to put it in here. And it's from a gentleman by the name of Chiachico, Gary Chiachico.
Ciascio.
Oh, okay. Gary Ciascio, and he suggested very specifically instructions, this map here, and it changed District 10 to be plus 16%, District 14 went to minus 15%, District 13 went to plus 17%, and 19 went to minus 24%. So
22 went up minus 27.
Wow.
yeah, there we go.
Did you give him a copy of the Voting Rights Act?
All those instructions were on the website with what needed to happen as far as our mandates. So I would say that this is not a viable map in my opinion, but that's for this committee to decide.
And I'll ask Mr. Rowan, open meeting, we were discussing this earlier. Do you think that would pass as a viable map with the percentages and everything that are there?
No, when you start to hit, you know, 29% deviation in one district, you're starting to really dilute the voting weight of the individuals in that district and the idea of, you know, one person, one vote. So you've got minus 27 plus 29. Those are significant deviations of population by district. You know, worst case scenario, you maybe you would be around 10, and it would require significant justification to be there. Maybe like a significant boundary perhaps, or some reason that you couldn't possibly deviate, such as the anchor district that Chairman Wheeler talked about. But in this case, with those numbers, I can't see that passing any type of court scrutiny.
Thank you. Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering if we could go back to E, and if we could zoom in between 5 and 2 to see which of the districts there would cover the Whitaker-Sumner area. It would be on like Whitaker Road towards Diversitech. Whitaker's so small, I'm sure it won't show up on the map.
Where are we at here?
Between 5 and 2.
Here?
Going east out of
Is that what-
1919,
There,
Whitaker Road.
that's right off of Diversitech.
Right, about right here.
Yeah, so that would be,
That'd be under
Whitaker
5.
would be in 5.
Yes. Yep.
And 2, that would be the moments area then. Got it.
Zooming back out a little bit, is there any other questions about 5 while I'm in there? Be happy to come back if something pops into your head, you know, and say, let's see, excuse me, what is this?
I do
E,
appreciate
this is E?
This is E,
Okay.
correct.
So I'll close this one out. Does anyone want to take a look or comment on any of these?
Mr. Featherly.
Is there any, nothing's taken out to see for farm ground and area and things like that, but is there any consideration given to people having to cover such big square miles area and then another district get to cover 3 blocks? I mean, it doesn't seem.
No, it's
I know,
unfortunate.
unfortunately, it's the way it is.
It's
but-
population.
Yeah.
That's the driver. That's number one, almost 1 through 9, and then you have to consider townships and other things after that, but it's almost all population equality.
The townships are all squared out, right?
Well, here, I can show you real quick.
I don't have a township map around anywhere anymore. I was looking at it.
Political townships here on the map. There's the townships on the map. But again,
Okay, that helps.
it's more population,
Yeah.
then it falls to township.
The township goes by ground. Looks like, so, yeah.
That kind of
Yeah. makes
shows
sense.
you a little
Yeah,
bit,
nice.
you know, and a lot of these are actually following those lines, you know, but sometimes in order to get the population you need, you gotta bounce it over a little bit. Like here is a good example. We can't go south in the Moments area with this district because that would obviously infringe on one of the anchors, but, so you have to go straight up. Or you could come straight across. But then you've limited here, and then that has to shoot across the river. So I mean, it's like I said, you change one thing here, and it pushes out
Yeah.
all the way
But-
across the county the other direction.
If you start, even if you shifted and you went to the west, then it's gonna push the west part over, and then you're gonna lose more over there anyway.
Right. You're
Correct?
gonna have it this way, or you're gonna have it this
This
way.
way.
That's why I keep trying to get people to understand, because you can't have it this way. You know, it can't be, you know,
Unless you're the state.
like the first map we saw.
Right.
Unless you're the state.
Any other questions? Ms. Weber?
Would you say the only one that puts number 2, District 2, including Moments, is D? The other ones put 2 going up and down, right?
Correct.
So is that,
D goes east and west.
which was the purpose was to include Moments?
The whole city of Moments.
Yes, and that
correct,
was-
into one.
That was a preference, I think. Thank you.
And when I say it was just options, you know, if everybody said, well, why is there 4 county board reps into Moments? Well, it was to grab a little piece of the population. That's why. You know, because you have to balance the population. So these were just different ways to balance the population and with compacting everything under logical boundaries.
And any other questions? Ms. Parker?
Just want to say I appreciate the straight lines. It's a whole lot easier. Thank you.
Okay, does any committee member have a request for to relook at any map? Okay, we're gonna start with discussion on this, which I think we've been into all this time. But any other discussion on these maps? We have a I couldn't think of the word, thank you. Sub-discussion going on.
Everything needs to be on the record. I'm sorry.
Guys, Todd, everything should be on the record when we're discussing.
So grab the mic.
We talk about.
He's preparing the stakes instead of tofu. He wants.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you like a motion for map removal?
Well, that's our next
Is that the
step.
next? Yeah.
Right. If anybody has Well, we know F is not viable to start with.
Right. So I'll make that motion that we remove F.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Searoyce to remove
Start the
map number
process.
F, or letter F, seconded by Mr. Featherling. Discussion.
The reason for it is the variances in the population are too large. And I don't think it encompasses some of the Equal Rights Act voting. Yeah, so that's my.
Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, could you put that in proper syntax, Counselor, in terms of what you articulated regarding F?
You mean with the last map?
Yeah, this,
Well, the analysis that we have,
that's it.
Yes, yep. This is F here.
the analysis we have on Exhibit F shows, for instance, District 23 has a population variance of plus 29.32%. District 22 has a population variance of minus 27.71%. So in effect, you have one district with a 30% population deviation, an increase, that still only has one vote on the county board. And then you have another district with a minus 27% population variance that has one vote on the county board. So you're looking at a 57% variation there, plus 30 to minus 27, and both sides still have one vote. You've diluted someone's vote in that scenario, and you've diluted it significantly.
Right, so the maker of the motion, that's incorporated in your motion, right?
Correct, sir. Thank you.
Right? I mean, it is what it is.
Sorry. I thought you were a little low there. Any other discussion on map F? Any other discussion on map F? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Hunter.
Now, Counsel, will you prepare a communication to the author of this map justifying why the action was taken, or not? Would
No,
that
I
be
mean,
appropriate?
that's an action of the board.
But based upon the articulation of you and the maker of the motion, you gave specificity as to why.
If the board asks me for a memo, if the chairman asks for a memo as to the viability of that map, we'll provide it, but we don't communicate with.
I understand, but I'm saying if you
submitted one.
send something to us as legislators who made the ultimate decision, and we can base that on specificity and empirical evidence as you and the chairman had articulated, and the maker of the motion said that would be appropriate, right?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Featherling.
Mr. Rowe, wouldn't that be in our minutes on the meeting on YouTube, or wherever it's highlighted at?
Yeah, look, the state's attorney's office doesn't tell you whether to approve a map, not to approve a map, but when you ask for a legal opinion as to whether a map is viable to the extent a court would look at it and say that's a fair map, my analysis of that map would be that it's not viable because of that significant deviation in population.
That's what we did.
So that's the basis for my opinion, so to say. The board now decides. The board could still go forward and pass that map, and we would have to likely defend it in court, and probably not successfully. But we don't tell you what to do, how to vote, whether to, kick a map or include a map. We just provide you with our best legal opinion, and in my opinion, that map would not be looked upon favorably by a court.
Okay, are there any other maps to take in consideration to eliminate? Anybody on Zoom? Mr. Featherly.
Mr. Wheeler, is that A is about as close to what it is right now, right? Seems to be.
Yeah, yeah, it's close. I mean, there's, and then B's just a little bit more, C's a little bit more, D's a little bit more, E's a little bit more. Actually, D and E are different versions of the moment, so it's really.
Just depends on that river area that we're talking about.
You've got about 4 different concepts, and you can, they can come back Friday or Monday and say, hopefully Friday, and say, start combining these aspects of these 2 maps, or this is the one we like, or let's take these 2 forward to Monday and think about it over the weekend. It's really your call, Okay.
Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, Andy, and I don't want to monopolize anything, but there's just some questions. You and staff, any other individuals that the clerk took time to take a look at this, and you use empirical data that's at your disposal. How would you, from your perspective, given all the dynamics associated with population and so forth, and the minimal amount of deviation, how would you rank these maps?
I don't really have an opinion there, I have to be honest.
Really?
That's for the committee to decide.
No, but
They're all viable, they're all legal.
Yeah, right.
I think they're all viable, I think they're all legal, I think they all are adhere to the Voting Rights Act. From that, and I think that they have varying improvements in compactness, and that's stepped from A to B to C to D. So that's, as you get, the districts get more compact as you go up the chain there.
What I'm essentially saying, I wanted you to rank those in terms of the minimal amount of deviation.
So I mean,
Maybe that's asking too much.
Yeah, I mean, you can look on here, when you get,
Well,
the
I see that.
highest deviation is 2%, which is on map D. And that's literally a difference of, I think, 1 vote, which,
Okay.
because 79 votes in that District 4 is 1.9% on maps A and B and C, and then in D, it goes to 80 vote deviation, which jumps to 2%.
Okay.
So the highest deviation you have there is 2% across any of these maps.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Well, Mr. Lear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a voting member of this committee, but as a member of the county board, I think there's a tremendous amount of detail here. I would urge this committee to take a little bit of time, allow them to look at these more closely before they try to make any further decisions, because it appears that there's just so much to take on at this point that it may be too early to do something today in terms of eliminating any one of these other 4 maps, or 5.
5 maps, yeah. Mr. Featherling.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm gonna have to, we gotta start a conversation here somewhere. I kind of like E, kind of looks like it was, somebody really put their head into it when they made it. It's not all chopped up, it seems smooth, and the lines are very, I don't know, what's the word to use? Copacetic, is that the word to use? It doesn't look all chopped up and like you took 3 boxes and drew them to the east and 2 boxes and drew them to the west and then filled the rest of it in. It looks like the boundaries are good, the lines are good, the main drags, the main highways, I don't know, just seems like it seems very nice and laid out and solid to me. I don't know how anyone can argue with the percentage variations in it. I mean, how much closer can you get than what you already have? I mean, if 2 people move in, then it changes the whole, it changes the percentages. So I just think that, I really think that he's really smooth looking, looks good. I don't know, but that's not probably what we're supposed to do, I don't know. It makes sense where the major boundaries are covered, let's put it that way, I think.
Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, I overlooked this, and I think that council spoke to this, and that really helps you out if you take a look at the empirical data that you got here.
Okay. At the start of the meeting, I said our goal would be to eliminate maps, so when we come back on the weekend. So far, we eliminated 1 map, and if that's what the pleasure is of the committee, we could come back Friday. It would, as Mr. Lear said, it'll give you time. These are all online.
Numbers wise.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna put
similar to
these
where it
ones, all these maps, yeah, we put these online. No, we were gonna wait until after this meeting. That was
After
it.
the meeting.
After the meeting, we're gonna put these online. We're leaving these in the boardroom for all committees and everybody on the board that come in here to look at. So they'll be up today.
Okay.
And this data up there on the compactness as well.
My point to that is if somebody gets on their computer, they could highlight this and get a little closer look at your boundaries to see which map is. Yeah, Mr. Feathery.
Yeah, my question was, is coming back, if we need more time to disperse this, look at it, read it, look at it, I mean, Friday's only a few days away, and we all have 2 meetings in between, most of us. Being ready to look at everything by Friday would be kind of tough to do, but I know you want to eliminate maps, so.
Correct.
We got Tuesday, we got executive, finance Wednesday, all kinds of other things going on, and all those other committees also this week, so it's gonna be kind of a busy week for me.
What?
Any other comments? Public comment? Is there any public comment? Okay, our future meeting dates is Friday, May 28th, and Monday, or Tuesday, pardon me, Mr. Hunter, Tuesday, June 1st, and we'll move on from there. Mr. Featherling.
Are we gonna set a goal to like eliminate 2 or eliminate 3 for Friday, or 1 for Friday, or what are we gonna do? You come in here and eliminate all?
My goal didn't make much sense this morning, so. Mr. Wheeler.
Well, the goal is that it would be nice that we're not in here meeting on June 7th, which is the day before the full county board meeting, without having this
Correct.
done. So the ultimate goal would hopefully to be to wind up on June 4th. I would suggest getting through Friday and maybe having a couple of choices to think about over the weekend, and then come in here Monday and vote on the one that you want. And it could, or Tuesday.
Tuesday.
At least I'm consistent. But the other thing could be you pick a map and then say, I want to see another one that encompasses this part of Momence and this part of the city. And then I can come in here and develop that for the Tuesday meeting.
Okay.
Or excuse me, Dell can come in here and develop that for the Tuesday meeting.
And I think that was my goal now. If we eliminate something, that way we have changes. It gives them time to go.
I can just speak, I know this is something we went over, I think, in the very beginning. One thing that you may want to avoid is going to your final board meeting for approval with just one map. I understand it's gone through committee, but when that one map goes to the board, and that's the only option on the table, and you're running up against a timeline, that's when courts have pushed back. And there was one case specifically on that, where the court said they were up against a deadline, the board was presented with one option at that time. Now, in that case, granted, it didn't come up through a committee like you're doing here. But I would say that when you bring it to your full 28-member board, it's probably beneficial to have more than just one option on the table.
I like that idea.
Yeah, it probably makes for more debate. It might be a longer process, but in the end, if the board had more than one option, I think you've got a better chance of it. Yeah.
Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is the chairman just indicated, these things will be posted. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. These maps and the data, that information is going to be posted, for the stakeholders, the constituents to take a look at, and hopefully we'll get feedback, from them too, and that may help us in our deliberation regarding options that we may pursue. Does that make sense? Chairman?
Yes, yes,
Yeah, okay.
I agree.
Collins?
Yes, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would it be beneficial to us as a committee to maybe take a ranked voting, or aim for that for this Friday, where we can all list the maps and the priority in which we like them, and then compare those against each other and try and get a sort of, well, just a ranked voting system for this to kind of go forward and eliminate more maps?
That's a thought. Comments on that?
Well, that's,
I'll go forward with the idea of putting our maps in order of how we like them, vote on that this Friday, and, or not necessarily, not present them to each other in our ranked order and see where that puts the maps in order as a group.
I just wonder how that helps. And I'm not saying it, to have that own process done internally within yourself is a good idea. This is the order of the way I like the maps, and maybe kind of elucidate why that you like it or don't like it, what needs to change in order for you to like it more. But if we come in here with ranked maps, we could end up with 4 ties.
It's true.
And I think that becomes a bigger problem than anything else. I think the goal should be to really come in and be willing to say on the record what you like about this map, and you have a second one or a third one internally. But to put that down in some type of a rubric, we could bind ourselves and not be able to move forward because we have 3 or 4 with the same number. You've got it first, you've got the same one second, you've got it third, and then the opposite direction, guess what? It's 2 to 2 on everything. So it doesn't work. But I think that, please, I think it's a strong suggestion to go through and rank them how you think they are and what's right about them and what's wrong with them.
Is there a reason that the committee wouldn't just bring the 5 maps to the full board?
Yes, because we won't bring 5 maps to the board because it'll be a 4-hour meeting.
Yeah.
And we are already breaking ground on the most open and transparent process I think the county's ever seen.
Yep.
And with 5, 4, I mean, and 2, sure, okay, we can have 2, but for 3, it's just going to be a nightmare.
Because you have 5 viable maps.
We do have 5 viable maps. You're right. And so I think then why should we have this committee in the first place, I guess, is my answer.
Well, I think because it did the work of eliminating, well, first it did the work of finding 5 viable maps, which is no small task. And then you've eliminated a map that came forward and really legally is just not viable.
Yeah.
I would just say the more options you can bring to that, I understand it's going to be a long meeting, but I just think the more options you can ultimately, the committee can bring to the board, the better, just for discussion. Because someone may really, you could have a majority of people on the county board who want D, and you bring A through C, you've kind of eliminated a map that the majority would have selected that's viable.
That's kind of what the
committee is, yeah. It'd be the same thing with the executive committee or finance or anything. You come with a recommendation.
Yeah, but this is a little bit different because someone at a full board could recommend something else, where here that option's not even really before them.
Well, they could have
any committee, yeah.
I agree.
Done their own map and frankly can still come to these meetings and contribute, but and because we do have other board members who aren't on this committee that don't vote. And their voice is just as important as the rest of us.
Yeah, we don't, obviously, we don't control how the committee functions or what ultimately goes to the board, but best advice we would provide is that ultimately more options is better than fewer options when you get to the full board vote.
Mr. Featherling.
I've been on the county board here for about 3 years, somewhere in there, and when I come to a meeting that's a committee that topic comes up that I'm not on that committee. When I come to the county board meeting, I know those people, and I know that they've gone through that and they've gone over it and they've looked at the details and they've looked at all the information and they've done all the things that they need to do homework wise to come to that meeting and know what to do. And then when it comes to the county board, I understand it. Mr. Lear and everybody, they looked at that, and if they think that's what they looked at in all those meetings and they think that's the best one, then I probably have to agree with that. If I look at it, unless it's out of whack, I would say that that's probably the best idea. So when something comes out of this committee, they're going to know that it was looked at and it was run through. You see all the maps and all the work that was done and all the charts and the graphs and everything that we have. It's like, how can you contest anything that's been done so far? I mean, I don't know how you could.
But it's not ultimately about one board member trusting the opinion of other board members. It's about someone in the public contesting that map, getting before a judge, and us being to go in and say, Judge, the board had more than just one option available to it at the full board vote.
Yeah, but I agree with Mr. Wheeler here that, you know, one or two, sure. Close together, not a lot of difference, sure. But everybody's gonna come in and wanna, you know, square up their own area and have this area in their district, and then they're all gonna stand around for 4 hours and argue about it. That's 28 people.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to do that here. That's what I thought I was here for. So I was under that information. So I would hope that they would trust our opinion to come up with the best 2 viable maps out of all this information. But that's up to them. They can contact us too. We all got email, so.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not suggesting that you go into the full board and allow people to start moving lines.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I mean, you're gonna ask the guy, do you like that map? It's like, no, because mine should be over here, and mine should be down here, and the railroad tracks are there, and, you know, maybe it looks better that way. Well, it's easy to walk in and go, I don't like it, when everybody else has done all the homework.
And that's been the thing from the beginning that I think everyone has echoed. You know, it's easy to say, no, I don't like that map. It's a whole hell of a lot harder to draw a map that passes all the legal standards.
Everyone had the opportunity to turn in a map before last Friday.
Yes.
Yep. And here you have 5 very viable maps.
Right here. We got all the numbers. They don't lie. So.
Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, without being redundant, guys, and I mean that collectively, you take a look at the last 2 columns, not the deviation and the percentage deviation. Don't look at the deviation per se, but you take a look at the percentage deviation. Unless somebody can come up with a map that's tighter than that in terms of the percentage, you know, it's not that it's going to take an act of Congress, but this is pretty tight in terms of the percentage deviation. And I think that's what the chairman has done in terms of his deliberation, and we've seen this empirically. Maps 1A through F. F was off the charts, as we all know, based on the comments, the empirical evidence that they've depicted in Mr. Ciaccio's map. But the other maps, you know, you take a look at the deviation, percentage deviation, it's pretty tight. They're pretty tight. There's not a whole bunch of a difference. So unless somebody can, you know, from the public or the 28 members, one of the persons can come up with something tighter than this, these look pretty good in terms of overall acceptability. But the process calls for us to eliminate, and I would think between now and Friday or whenever, we'll have the opportunity to take a look at the maps and look at the data which you have here.
Okay. Between Friday and Tuesday, that does not give the chairman much time to make many changes in that either, so.
Yeah.
Are you gonna be up to that?
Congress.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? I'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Featherling, second by Mr. Hunter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carried.